No. The answer is no. At least that's what you would probably be thinking if I hadn't just watched Spargo's Piranha Plant do the very same thing just a few weeks ago. That's actually the whole reason why I wanted to make this video in the first place, because in Smash Ultimate there's been this narrative for a long time that every single character is viable. Now, while I believe this to a certain extent, the question that we're going to be asking today is, can these characters solo through a whole major tournament and actually win? And I'm gonna tell you, it's probably not as many as you think. Now, to start off, specifically, I'm going to be focusing on the D tier, or what would generally be considered the 10 to 12 worst characters in the game. All of these characters have been routinely at the bottom of tier lists since the beginning of Smash Ultimate. These are characters that have never really moved up or down and are generally considered the worst characters in the game. Now, Piranha Plant obviously has been here, but we just saw Spargo go crazy with him. Now, this may get you thinking, oh, all these other characters that are supposedly better than Piranha Plant, like Kirby or King K. Rool or Isabelle, should surely be able to do this if Piranha Plant can. Now, I'm going to disagree, and let me tell you why. These characters don't have or are not as versatile as Piranha Plant, and what that means is Piranha Plant has all of the attributes to what creates a matchup check. Or, for example, if there's a character that you haven't played against a bunch, like Ice Climbers, and you're not sure what to worry about when you're going up against Ice Climbers, you can get matchup checked by a player that is worse than you, or might not be as good at the game as you, but still lose because you just have no clue how to play that matchup because you just don't play them a bunch. Now, you do see more characters like King K. Rool, Kirby, King DDD, even Ganon more often online and in person, so you will see that matchup a little bit more often. But Piranha Plant is one of the least played characters in the entire game, which means that anybody who goes up against him probably won't know what secret stuff to look for. The other thing is that Piranha Plant has a very versatile moveset. One of the most important things that I think for a bad character in Smash Ultimate to have to make sure that they are still technically viable is a projectile. This is really important because in Smash Ultimate, a game all about spacing and creating space between you and your opponent in neutral and making sure that you're pressing advantages while not necessarily being right next to your opponent, a projectile is really important, and luckily for Piranha Plant, he has a really good one. The Spitball is extremely good. It has armor on it, it extends hitboxes, it covers ledge, it covers roll, it covers a lot of stuff, and it can also be used in the air. It's so versatile, and it is one of the only reasons that Piranha Plant isn't the worst character in the game, is because he has a good projectile. Now, if we look at these characters that are low on this list, characters like Ganon or Little Mac or Kirby, who don't have projectiles, struggle extremely versus zoner characters. If you're going up against a character like Young Link with Ganon or Little Mac, it's extremely hard to get in simply because the only thing that you can really do in those situations when they're spamming items against you is parry or roll, and if you're playing on a stage with not a lot of platforms, you're kind of cooked. There isn't much they could do. And when you're in disadvantage, you don't have a projectile to maintain the small bit of space that you have, you're just going to get ran down every time. That's the main reason why I don't think that Ganondorf could ever win a major. He also doesn't have another thing that Piranha Plant is good at, and that's a good recovery. While Piranha Plant has a pretty standard up B, which can still be spiked out of and only has a hitbox on the sides, it does have a hitbox on the sides, which means that you'll see players mess up their edge guards a lot against Piranha Plant because one of the leaves will hit them and knock them into hit stun, which means they're now forced to recover, and it can put them in a bad situation. It goes pretty far, which means that you can mix it up sometimes. You can even go under the stage if they're not prepared for that. And using down B and neutral B to stall, you can mix up your recoveries and make it so that you're a little unpredictable and that characters aren't being able to edge guard you and spike you off stage for free, which means that Piranha Plant's recovery is not as bad as Little Mac or Ganon, which is one of the biggest things at top play. If you've noticed, there are certain matchups that are considered 100-0, and these matchups are typically because the character that is up in that matchup is generally so oppressive at every stage of the game that you can't do anything. And one of those matchups is Ganon Pikachu. Often considered maybe one of the worst, if not the worst matchup in the entire game. there isn't really anything that Ganon can do against Pikachu, because Pikachu will just hit a neutral B, off stage, back air, spamming forward air, down air, up air, all of Pikachu's moves hit Ganon and knock him off stage. And since Pikachu has one of the best edge guarding potential in the whole game against Ganon's very linear bad recovery, it just leads to edge guards over and over and over and over again. And there's nothing that Ganon can do to get in. That's the same for Little Mac, although Little Mac has some gimmicks with the armor that allow you to get in a little bit more. It's the same situation because he has a worse recovery, which means, again, all of these top tier characters are getting edge guards over and over and over again, which means that against high level players who know how to abuse this, you're not going to have that much luck. Now, a lot of people think that their character might be more viable because they're playing online, where players are less disciplined in executing ledge guards and edge guards over and over and over again, but that's not the case in real competitive tournament play. Now, other characters down low like King Dedede, Dr. Mario, and Zelda are a little more contentious. Characters like Mii Sword Fighter, who used to be down low in D tier, have been moved up after more people have played them. But other characters like King K. Rool and Isabelle have generally stayed down here, and I think that's where they remain. If I looked at D tier and I had to pick one or two characters who I thought could actually be as successful as Plant has been with Spargo, the two characters that I would probably pick are, one, King Dedede, because he has that projectile like I talked about, and he does not have an easily gimpable recovery, which is the other factor I talked about, and Isabelle. Now, Isabelle is a character that I think doesn't have a lot of potential. If you remember, there was that one Isabelle at the very beginning of Smash Ultimate that got a few upsets on top players, but ever since then, we haven't seen any sort of success like that. But Isabelle has a pretty good recovery, has projectiles that can space you out, and if played properly, can be a matchup check for certain characters, especially because there's not a lot of Isabelles at top level. But the rest of these characters, Dr. Mario, Kirby, even Zelda, who just doesn't have a projectile, even though Knight is technically a projectile, it's a little too predictable, and at high level it's hard to utilize since they just stay out of its range, so it's very situational. But characters like Dr. Mario just don't have a good enough recovery. Kirby doesn't have a good enough recovery. These are characters. King K. Rool can be easily destroyed combo game, and while he is a projectile, his recovery can be abused, especially at the highest level. All of these characters just simply do not have what it takes, or a better way to put it would not be that they don't have what it takes, especially offensively, because they still do have a moveset that can win games. The problem is that they have the biggest weakness, and in Smash Ultimate, if you look at all your top tier characters, it's less about who has the biggest strength and who has the least amount of weaknesses. All of your top tier S tier characters all have fantastic recoveries, bar like Fox, even though his recovery you can mix it up with side B, so it's not the worst thing ever. But none of them have recoveries that are easily edge guardable. They all have really various ways to combo you, various neutral games, all have different ways to ledge guard you. They just have no weaknesses. The characters at the bottom simply just have the most amount of weaknesses. So no, I don't think that Ganon can win a major. I don't think that Little Mac can win a major. I'm very sorry to those out there, the Ganon and Little Mac mains that are thinking that you can win a major. I don't see it happening. Although, like I said, I might have said the same thing about Plant before I saw Spargo's success and saw somebody utilize him at the highest level. I just don't think for these characters they have that sort of, like I said, the two things that I think are important for any character to be successful in tournament play in Smash Ultimate are, one, a projectile, two, a non-gimpable recovery. That means that at least for the most part, you can't be abused, because any character that doesn't have those things is going to be abused by any type of high tier character, regardless of the skill level, right? You could have the best neutral in the world, the best combo game in the world, the best game sense in the world. But if you're getting gimped and edge guarded every single time and just losing your stock at 30% because you can't get back to the ledge, and you're getting back aired by Pikachu every single time at 30%, there's nothing you can do, right? You're going to get put in those situations by most of the top tier characters in this game simply because you're either slow, or you don't make a lot of space, or you have no projectile, or you have bad recovery. But let me know what you guys think. Out of the characters that we talked about in today's video, are there any that you think could be carried by a player like Spargo into the highest tier of a Smash Ultimate major? Like I said, my two that I would pick I would pick Isabelle and King DDD. Those are the only two that I think would really fit my rule that I came up with in this video. But as always, make sure to let me know what you guys think down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.